How's it going, everyone? Today, we're going to talk about some of the ins and outs of private money lending. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode. Thanks again for chiming in. As always, be sure to subscribe. We try to give our subscribers all sorts of off YouTube content, whether that be training, seminars, access to one-off events, what have you. So be sure to subscribe. I really want to start using the subscriber base to begin to build kind of a smaller network so we can begin to learn from each other, really just share ideas and sort of become that network of learning, okay? So today I want to talk about one of my favorite types of investments, which is private money lending. And it's a great investment if you're doing it correctly, and it's a really dangerous investment if you are making mistakes that far too many make, and myself have made in the past. And so I just want to go over a few of those items just to be considering for you what you should be asking and thinking about as you go about investing in these kinds of deals. Okay. So, and I had the pleasure to be with several clients this past weekend in Scottsdale, and we sat down and just talked about some of the stories that they've come across in terms of working with past borrowers and whatnot, and it made me realize we should probably tell everyone out there what are some of those lessons, right? And the first thing I'll tell you is when you do a private money lending deal, more important than anything, more important than the numbers, more important than the property or the amount of money is trust. And this is obviously not hard to believe. This happens in business, in life, and it definitely happens when you give your hard-earned capital to someone that you may or may not know, okay? And so, in fact, one of the things that I'm doing now more than ever is sitting down with clients to really, one, gain their trust, and two, walk them through kind of how we do it differently than others, right? And the first thing I'll tell you is that intuitively, if you don't have the trust in the deal, I would caution lending money. All right, this is usually these deals will be anywhere between $40,000 up to about $250,000. And so for you to give that amount of capital, at the very least, have some conversations with the people that you're giving the money to, understand their operations, how big is their team, how many deals have they done in the past, and so forth, right? So one of the first things to do is establish trust, know who you're giving your money to, all right? And that can be done by, a few phone calls, listen to consistency in how they go about, planning and executing on the deal. Understand, what their process is, right? And that takes me to my next point, and maybe the most critical part of the equation, which is the team, right? You really need to understand who you're giving your money to. One of the riskiest ways to do it is if you give your money to maybe like a mom and pop shop, someone, husband and wife, for example, that does flips on the side. Maybe they've done a few deals in the year and they've had success, but now they're coming to you and you don't know them, and they're asking for money. And while the project may seem good, you really want to understand, okay, what is their experience? How are they managing these projects? Is it a part-time basis, right? And what you're looking for here is you want to have a team that has at least 5 to 7 years experience doing these projects. You want to, understand how they have failed. Everyone has failed in doing some sort of flip, and if they haven't, then they haven't got enough experience under their belt. Understand how they're protecting themselves against the risk. Real estate is an interesting puzzle. When you go into a house and you begin to tear down the walls, you're going to find problems that you didn't plan for in the scope of work, okay? And I don't care who it is, that happens to every single flip. In my experience, every one I've done, there's new problems that arise, new expenses that you weren't factoring into your scope of rehab. So that should be in the scope of work. They should be thinking about those things, and if they're not, it's a big red flag to me. What is their exit? Do they have multiple ways to exit the property and still make a profit? You got to make sure that they're thinking about their risk more than their upside. The upside is great if it happens, but what if the downside happens? Because if the downside happens, there's a chance that you may take over the property. And if you take over the property, you yourself need to have enough upside so that you don't lose money in the deal, okay? And so again, team's really important. The bigger the team, the more seasoned the team, the better. Let's just say, for example, the foreman or the project manager is the main person on the job. Well, if it's just one person doing the entire job and they get hit by a car or God forbid, whatever, that's it. Who's going to take over, right? My team in Kansas City, they have a staff of 26 people. So if the foreman, gets hit by a car, they probably have someone to backfill him and continue the project, right? And so the team is really important. You want to be working with teams that have made mistakes, have been doing this for a long time, have the operation in place, they know how to execute, because keep in mind, when you think about private money lending deals, at least the ones that I do, we focus on the points. The points are what you get every time you do a deal. The goal that I shoot for is at least, if you give me $100,000 of your capital, we want to turn that capital at least twice a year. So if the points in the deal are 2-3 points, then you should make around 6%, 3 points times 2, within 12 months just from recycling your money. And then every additional interest payment on top of that is all gravy, right? So, and in doing so, my clients they tend to be making 16 to 20% return on their money because we're focused on how well can the team execute. And if the team's seasoned, they'll execute a lot faster, which means more money for them, more money for you, and usually less risk in the deal, okay? So step one, trust. You've got to build the integrity. You got to build the transparency and the trust to understand who you're working with, okay? Number two is the team. How experienced are they? How well can they execute against plan? That's critical. Okay, and then three, as we give all of our lenders in the deals, we have a pretty detailed analysis of understanding, again, not just the upside of the deal, but also the downside risk. And so you're thinking about, okay, well, what incentive does the team have to keep this deal going? Meaning, how much profit will they make? You don't want to be lending to deals that have small amounts of profit for the borrower, right? They should have substantial amount of profit to encourage them to go forward with the deal, okay? Cash flow. You got to make sure that the team borrowing has enough resources to pay the bills month to month, right? So what are the reserves? How are they going to be paying you for the next 4 to 5 months? Understand that, okay? Cash flow, if God forbid they can't sell the property. They can't sell the property and it becomes a rental, will they still be able to pay you, pay the utilities, pay the insurance, property taxes, and still cash flow? Again, this is another metric that we look at in our deals, okay? And the last one that I'll talk about here, well, really there's two, so let's hit on two of these. Leverage, really important. So in our deals, the max LTV, which is loan to value, and that's essentially how much capital was borrowed versus how much the property will be worth once it's completed in rehabs. That, by most industry standards, ranges between 70 to 80% across most hard money lenders. So meaning that if the property was going to be worth $100,000 when it's all done with rehabs, most hard money lenders will give up to 70 to 80% of that, or $70,000 to $80,000. We have a max in our deals of 70%. So I will not let a client borrow or provide more than $70,000 in that deal. And that's important because, again, if you take over the deal, we got to make sure that there's enough margin in it for you to make a profit if you need to start hiring people to finish the job. Okay, so really critical there. And then the last piece is the marketability of the project. Very simply, and I tell everyone to do this, when you get the address that of the property, do a Google Earth search. Street view, take a stroll through Google Earth down the street. What do you see? Is it a place that has trash and neighboring properties? Do you see people in the streets kind of, who knows doing what? What does the neighborhood look like, right? And that's important for marketability. If it's a trashy neighborhood, if there's people in the streets doing who knows what, trash cans are flipped over, who's going to want to live there? And if no one wants to live there, who's going to buy the property? Okay, so a simple Google search, Street View, gives you a lot of intel as to what kind of property that you're buying. And then lastly, just the property itself. From the curb, how attractive is the property? Does it have a weird design where it might turn people off? Is it a strange layout, 5 bedrooms, 1 bath? Something wonky like that will make it really hard to sell either to an investor or rent or to the primary market, okay? So just understanding what is the marketability of the property. And so, keep that in mind as you are borrowing or giving money to the borrowers. So those are some of just key tips that I tell all my clients that I myself consider when I do private money lending deals. It's a fantastic asset choice if you are working with the right team, if you're looking at the deal in the right way, and if the numbers make sense. Otherwise, I can't caution you enough, do be careful on how you give your money to people that you do not know. All right. So with that said, again, please subscribe. We have more content like this in the upcoming weeks, and I'll talk soon. Thanks.